Testing 1, 2, 3. I see my microphone moving, so I'm assuming that I'm talking. We'll give it a second for folks to come in. So if you want to hang out, see if I can play some more music. Nope, won't let me play no more music. Okay, so I see you, Mansoor, and I'm gonna invite you. Means it's not co-host. Yay! It says you're co-host, but it says you're muted. Can you unmute?
Can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Woohoo! Much success. Okay. So you think we should wait a few minutes for people to come in? Because right now it don't seem like we got a lot of folks. I retweeted. If you could repost if you're in the room, that would be super cool.
I'm
Let's
gonna
see
put
if I
headphones in.
okay, I'm gonna try and start putting stuff in the jumbotron. Okay, so this is go to my space profile, go here, and see if I let me put it in. And I think yeah, I added it. Okay. So I don't think people can speak unless they request, right? And we have to make them speakers. I think that's how it works. So it says you're on mute right now. Okay.
How you doing today, Dr. Brown? Can you hear
I'm
me all
doing
right? I put headphones
awesome.
in.
I
I'm
can
using
hear
my
you. You
computer
sound
this time.
fantastic. Hi, Buffalo. Do the emojis work, or you have to be a speaker for the emojis to work?
Hey,
I don't
Buffalo.
know.
I feel like I have been off spaces for a minute, but it's good to see familiar faces.
And, it's hard to fit. I guess people will. Oh, okay. I just saw a little heart. Awesome. So you think we should wait a little bit more, Mansoor, or be respectful
Um,
of my time? I usually give my students like 5 minutes to get into the class.
we can play it like that then. We can wait a couple
Okay,
of
yeah, because I'll
minutes.
be like, okay. So we're gonna give 404, 406.
Central
That's
Standard.
what we go. Central Standard.
I'm on
Well,
the East
2 minutes.
Coast.
I think
I'm on
two
the
minutes
East
is
Coast.
gonna be 2 minutes gonna be 2 minutes. East or west. Oh, I'm so glad. I love spaces because now, like, I really still got my bonnet on. Because I got to start grading papers. I was like, it's too cold out here. I ain't going nowhere. But I got to take my bonnet off. Can't nobody see me on spaces.
Mhm.
But hi, love I am. Yes, hello. And James. Um, as you can see, I'm not an expert like Buffalo in Twitter spaces. Should we
Also,
make
regarding your
Buffalo
bonnet,
co-host? Should we make Buffalo co-host too? You gotta be able to control the room. Buffalo, would you co-host when we get it to make it like taking questions and stuff? Give me a thumbs up. She laughing. Maybe not. No, Buffalo might get me in trouble. she, she'll let somebody up here who want to go after me. I don't care now. I ain't never scared. Okay, we're gonna make Buffalo a co-host. So let me see if I know how to see invite to co-host. Okay. Send co-host invite. There we go. So yeah, I was in Buffalo. I was in a couple spaces Buffalo was in today. She was running interference for me. Okay, so now she's the co-host. Okay.
Thank you. I'm honored.
Oh, well, I am honored that you accepted. So
Hi,
should we
mister.
go? Yes.
Hey Buffalo, how you doing today?
Doing good. You gonna bring people on the stage, Dr. Brown? I just kind of have one thing as the co-host is like, if people in the space got me blocked and they want to speak, I feel like they should unblock me because I
I
can't go into
agree.
their spaces, and I
You're
can't
right.
go into spaces that they co-host yeah, at all.
I
So
agree with you. We'll do that when we get to this portion. What we try to do is actually set this up like how I do for a normal kind of class situation. Just do a little bit of an agenda we have because we don't want it to get boring and I don't want to get didactic where I feel like I'm lecturing to people. I do want to have interaction. So I think you and Mansoor are like the perfect people to co-host to help with that. So should we go ahead and get started, Mansoor?
Yeah, I just want to thank
Okay. Oh
everyone for
yes.
tuning in. I'm glad that you, Dr. Brown, host these spaces on X Spaces for adult education, adult learning, especially as it relates to these important topics that we get into. And today we're going to be talking about civic engagement and
Mhm.
data collections with the OMB. And
Yep.
I'm, excited to learn from you and also to facilitate conversation here with Buffalo.
Okay. Well, thank you, good sir. Well, y'all, this is our little Black History Month contribution. But I just wanted to first start off with giving some context to what recently happened by way of these ethnicity and race codes that were requested through what is called a request for public comment. And what happens is in this case, it wasn't really the OMB, but one of the agencies that falls up under its auspices, which is the Census Bureau. And the Census
Mhm.
Bureau is so critical to how we count people in the United States. Now, currently, we do not have a distinction between someone who is a US citizen and someone who is just here, and that being the case of people who may be here as undocumented. But still, the Census Bureau goes about counting all of these people. And it's important because the result of those population statistics help them to determine where resources should go in terms of police, hospitals, fire, and more importantly, congressional appropriations. That means if your population increases significantly, you get more representation or seats in Congress. And that's what happened with the last census that was in 2020. These census take place every 10 years. They're called a decennial census. So the next one that's coming up is in 2030. So it's so important that you understand what's at stake here as it relates to us being counted properly. More specifically, because our country has changed so much, right? Every 10 years, you can have a significant change in population. We are currently in the midst, under this new president, of mass deportation of persons who are here according to their assessment illegally. Because if these people are here during the 2020 census, 2030 upcoming census, they will be counted. And they will be counted in what is called the kind of snapshot before the census called the American Community Survey. So Buffalo and my store, and I think you too, Love I Am, out of the people I see in this room, participated in the earlier call by the OMB, where they asked us to give public input on their periodic change to race and ethnicity codes. And the last time they had updated it before 2003, excuse me, 2023 was 1997. And as y'all can imagine, our country was very different in 1997, even in terms of the population groups that are here today in 2025. So at that time, there was only one group that had an ethnicity category, and that was Hispanic, non-Hispanic. So a bunch of us went in there because we felt it was important as the country continues to become more racially and ethnically diverse that we be able to draw out a unique identifier for those of us who descend from slaves and United States freedmen, because we have the sneaking suspicion and life experience that discrimination is still uniquely happening to our group. But because those who are responsible for collecting data don't have a variable to uniquely identify us, that data capture or that statistical collection is not taking place for us to make the case that our civil rights are not being preserved, and in fact that we are having harms that need to be addressed through intervention. Does that make every sense to everybody? Can you hit me with a thumbs up or something if that makes sense of what I just explained? Thank you, Buffalo.
I was
Okay.
gonna say that earlier there is a delay down for the people in
Oh,
listener,
okay.
so it takes a little bit of time for their reactions
Oh.
and for them to hear us having the conversation.
Oh, okay. So I just got some thumbs up. So thank you, y'all. I appreciate you telling me that, Buffalo, with my sensitive stuff. I say anybody give me no thumbs up. Okay. And so as I continue to kind of set the context, so you have the OMB, which is called the Office of Management and Budget, and then you have the United States Census Bureau existed before the Office of Management and Budget in our country. So our country has been engaged in collecting population data for some time. But I think I don't remember the exact year that the Office of Management and Budget, which is an executive office, that means it reports directly to the president, was created. And all the current 14 federal agencies that exists, which includes health and human services, labor, and jobs and labor, the justice system, or wherever the jails and stuff are like. You would have to pull it up to look at all the agencies that fall under its auspices. This is pretty much all of them. And so the new director of the OMB, he just got confirmed. His name was Russell Vogt. And what I found hopeful about him, I know there's been some criticisms in association with his supposedly associated with Project 2025, which is stories for another day. But I watched his confirmation hearing. He was extremely confident. And I didn't feel like he was like some of these other appointments that seem more like somebody hooking up their friends, or a loyalist appointment. I was really happy with what I saw with him. And also when I researched his background, I saw that he went to Wheaton College. And if any of y'all are familiar with higher education systems, Wheaton College is an abolitionist, it was established by abolitionists. And so this just helps you appreciate there is a unique awareness of ourselves as being descendants of slaves, because the abolitionists fought against slavery. And their school, Wheaton, was the first, I think, in Illinois to graduate a Black person with a degree from their institution. I have to double check that. But in any event, it led me to believe that there was a sensibility about us being unique from what I call foreign Blacks or immigrant Blacks that come in the country. He recognizes and understands that unique history. I also heard when that he was the one who fought against their attempts to eliminate the word Negro out of the federal registry, and that he fought to preserve that historical name that was a part of our group. So to me, those are two good signs. I know in his testimony before the Senate, he talks about coming from a working class family. He said his father was an electrician. I think his mom was like a stay-at-home mom, but he's not from any kind of like privileged background per se. So those were all good signs to me. So he is the one who is in charge under President Trump of the OMB. And before his appointment, we all got these notices about these federal registry codes and our invitation to make public comments about it. And so they sent out the announcement, and initially there was like a spreadsheet that we all could access and see the codes. And you can make recommendations in order to make sure that our data was collected. I was shocked when I saw that those codes. They had codes that I had never expected that did not seem to be related to race and ethnicity. They actually seemed that some of the codes were related to political ideologies. For example, they had a code under the larger category of Black for those persons who identified as Pan African. Um, there were also several variations on African American, Afro Latino, and et cetera, et cetera. If you look in the jumbotron, I guess that's what we still calling it, you will see our response to the Census Bureau with our recommendations about the codes and a reiteration of our complaint that we felt like the minimum categories they created were insufficient and possibly civil rights violations because they didn't give us the granularity of identity that they promised, but gave it to other groups. In fact, they created a whole new group called MENA, Middle Eastern North African. And they created, according to them, uh, an equal race and ethnicity concept. So, Black or African American, that can be equally viewed as race and ethnicity. Hispanic, Latino could be viewed as equal race or ethnicity. So that was the language that I picked up. And y'all can tell me if y'all thought otherwise, Buffalo and Mansour, that they just made all of the new minimum categories co-equal race and ethnicity categories. They did not get into defining what race and ethnicity meant as they had done in the prior census. And we actually captured that in some early technical reports we submitted to them. So if you go to like this thing I shared here on ResearchGate, you see other things that we sent to the OMB in addition to some of my own scholarship that I've done with other people, my graduate students and other colleagues. In any event, this particular submission we did was for all of us who were from Ohio. So Dr. Evelyn McDowell was one of the authors of this last submission, and also Monsieur, because his grandma was born in Ohio. So what we did is center ourselves as Ohioans so we can make our case to our elected officials who can do the advocacy for us. Because I know there's a lot of people who go online and do advocacy in this way, but some people want you to pay them or contribute to their funds. I was like, I ain't paying nobody to do political advocacy for me that they got elected to do. Plus, I felt like, why would I do it when most of my elected officials are attorneys anyway? So, what you end up finding out is a lot of times they have so many things on their plate, they're not even aware of all these things that were going on. So, when we initially approached, our Congress people and was upset about what had happened in the first release of the revised race and ethnicity categories, they got right on top of it. They was calling the OMB office for us and making sure that our concerns were being addressed. And according to them, they were going to be sensitive to the things that we said we wanted to happen. And I think that's true because the first release said that they wanted to do future research on how they may include an identifier to address those participants who express a need for a category to capture those persons who were descendants, Black persons who were descendants of slaves in the United States or freedmen. Those were two of the categories. But I thought that overwhelmingly there was sensitivity toward people wanting to definitely be identified as Black American. So far, so good, y'all. My co-host.
Yes.
Okay. And so in this last, as I said, this last call for public comment, what had happened was they sent out a notice that they were having like a webinar, right? So I'm like, okay, well, let me go on and jump in there and listen to this. And so as God would have it, they opened up the lines for comments, and I happened to be one of the ones that got picked to speak. I said, I was in there, I was like, I was as diplomatic as I can. I said, quite frankly, I don't even know how to take this. I'm kind of shocked that you all have still moved forward with not allowing for granularity that we have requested and was promised in the earlier process with the OAB. So, what are our options now? They said, well, you can make code recommendations. So I'm like, okay, cool. That's the way we're gonna do it. But I was hot after that little meeting. So I got on Ohio, and y'all, I could barely get it out because I was
Uh,
about ready. Uh-huh. Because I was
oh,
I was
sorry
about
about
ready.
that.
Huh? Okay, I heard
I
you.
apologize.
Buffalo, would you say something, Buffalo?
Yeah, I was off the mic. I apologize.
Okay, no worries. And so I was about to cry because I said, I can't believe they here and they are trying to erase us. So I start calling all the people I had been working with and trying to get at. And so I think someone joined the call who I think may have been one of my contacts because they did identify themselves as a lawyer and their voice sounded familiar to me. So, anywho, after we did all that, there was I think somebody called ENT Media. They recorded it, right? But when the Census Bureau released their recording, they hid all the faces of the people. But the people who were in there at the meeting, they recorded it. So I sent that copy to all the elected officials. And at this time, over that past year, I have worked myself up from the bottom to the top. I started working with my city council member person for something else I was doing regarding historic preservation of our identity as Black Americans in our city. And then I went to my sister, who was a state rep, and I went to our congresswoman. Then I was working most closely with my Congress person's office, Amelia Sykes, because in Ohio, we have a unique history of a group called Black Elected Democrats, and they have always been very, very strong advocates for us in our state. Ohio is unique from a lot of other states in that it was one of the destination places where the people who came up north from the Great Migration, and Ohio prides itself on having communities such as Oberlin, where Blacks could come and, start up new lives and become professionals and doctors and attend Oberlin College. But we also have 5 routes on the Underground Railroad, which Ohio proudly brags about. So there's a real abolitionist spirit that is a part of the Ohio state of Ohio legacy. And there was a public address that was made in Arlington, I think Arlington National Cemetery, where several Ohio State representatives were there, where they did a New York address to the freedmen. And they talked about the whole idea of starting HBCUs and things like that. And so you had a lot of elected officials from Ohio who attended there and were advocates for those newly emancipated people. So I have a very, very, special place in my heart from my hometown and my upbringing. I don't care wherever I go, I always consider Ohio my home. So, as I said, when we did our codes, we wanted to take into consideration all the wonderful things we've been hearing from people and wanting to make sure that we were able to be good advocates and ask our elected officials if they would tell the OMB that they want to be a pilot for the revised codes, because the OMB did leave that little door open that these are the guidelines, but states can have some wiggle room in how they wanted to implement them. But these are the minimum categories that you are to use. Well, subsequent to the new election, all that has changed. So when direct to vote came into play, I think everything has kind of been put on hold in terms of any real actions about these race and ethnicity codes, and that I think they're going to be coming under evaluation under his authority over the OMB. So I feel encouraged by that, especially when I went back to check those hyperlinks on those codes and they're no longer available. So even the report that the what is she called, Mansour? The United States Statistics Director,
Yeah,
the
the
chief
statistician.
status It's chief statistician of the United States. She had released a whole report about that OMB process, and you'll see that in our response. But even her link was made unavailable. So I think they're very serious about re-examining these code submissions and how they're going to go about doing it. And I am, and a lot of this is my conjecture, and I will be honest about that. So, when I initially started out, like I said, I started off with my Democratic representatives because those are the people I knew, and those are the ones I had the easiest access with. But then somebody in their office, they challenged me. They said, "Well, have you talked to Republicans about this?" I said, "I had planned to, but I ain't did it yet." They said, "Well, why don't you try that?" So then I started just making overtures to Republicans, and I knew at the time, I had always liked J.D. Vance because of his book Hillbilly Elegy. I used it in one of my classes when I was at Ursuline College, and I grew up with a lot of Appalachian whites. So in Ohio, Appalachian whites, they're kind of like have this hillbilly culture, but they have a lot of cultural similarities to a lot of poor and low income blacks. And so his grandmother's story in particular resonated with me and how she looked out for him and she was no nonsense about taking care of JD. And that's, I identify with that being a new grandma myself. So I reached out to his office, our governor's office, and this is before the president had gotten shot. So I was making little connections and people start, making overtures and really concerned about what I was saying about those race and ethnicity categories. And so I ended up meeting with the regional director for then Senator J.D. Vance, because he was a senator in my state. And so a whole lot of his staff was really helping me to move up the chain to get communication with them. So me and her met up in Cleveland. It was a great meeting. I think we met on a Tuesday, and that Saturday, President Trump, there was an assassination attempt on his life, and so everybody shut down their offices. So I was not able to go and meet in person with a lot of people. And as election season was approaching, they said that a lot of stuff we would not be able to do until after the election. And they have been very good about communicating with me. I've been working with the governor's direct report and stuff like that. But after there was an attempt on President Trump's life, that following Monday, I think he selected J.D. Vance to be his vice president. I said, "Oh, Sookie, now there's a possibility that we might have direct, access to the possible president of the United vice president of the United States." And so they did make arrangements, and I was speaking with his general counsel. His name was Ben Moss. That happened after I met with Beth Bingham, who was the regional director. So ain't nobody's emails bouncing back to me like I'm blocked. So I send everything that I have been doing and I copy them. And my is included on that in communication stream. So is at one Dr. Dearity and Kirsten Mullen and Dr. McDowell and uh, Son of Memphis. We were all at one time or another through this process. I was keeping them apprised of what was going on. So uh, that's where we're at right now. So I've submitted our codes. I know I've heard a lot of people talk about other options that they're exploring, but if I can, I'm gonna try and upload that spreadsheet. There's already a code for Negro on there. There's already a code for African American on there. There actually is, oddly enough, under the larger category that they have black, they actually had a black subcode. So you could be black black. And so it really looked like it was a very poorly constructed nomenclature scheme, which is in chemistry what we call taxonomy. And so hopefully they are going to look at these recommendations. We did submit recommendations that would include an ethnicity term and identity for those blacks who have one parent who was a descendant of U.S. chattel slaves and freedmen and one parent that was not. I think that's been an area of less clarity than we need to have, because there are some people, as you know, who are biracial or bi-ethnic. But I didn't see a lot of people presenting proposals of how to capture those groups. You have some people, depending on how they present phenotypically, and if they look more white, they may choose to self identify as white, even if they have one black parent. So I thought it was important to capture that group. So when we look at statistics on health outcomes, educational outcomes, are we seeing disparities where those persons who are more white adjacent or less black affinity in terms of their grouping, are they experiencing better outcomes than we are? Then that also puts us in a position to make our case, I feel like, for harm still occurring to us as descendants of slaves, which can move us into having the fuel, the energy, the evidence, the support that something needs to be done to ensure our civil rights and, by extension, reparations are provided to us, because we continue to experience the harm being the children of those people who were freed and emancipated, and that we still are continuing ongoing discrimination. So that's why I wanted to share with everybody and let them know what we've been doing on our end. And I have just been very, very excited how I've been able to work this into my scholarship as a professor, and that my students have gained a lot of knowledge about, this whole process and this whole issue of identity and our experiences uniquely as Black Americans, through the process of slavery that we experienced in this country, and how we have generated what this country has become, because we and our ancestor built the what I call destination I have a dream space that everybody wants to come to. And we certainly need to make sure that you take care of those people who help create and build that space, whether you be a person of the settler class or the person of the cultivated class, which is what I call us, because we are not immigrants. We did not volunteer to come here. We emerged here as a direct result of the offense of the transatlantic slave trade. And this country was not a good steward of our experience and owes us repair. So that's it in a nutshell, what I wanted to share. How that sound, guys? Did I cover enough stuff to make it interesting?
Yeah, you covered a lot of things, and if it's all right with you, I just
Okay.
want to like kind of briefly just rehash it to you just for clarification and maybe for folks who are joining and maybe missed some of that, and then maybe Buffalo if you
Okay.
wanted to add any sort of questions, but I also have some questions too. But so
Okay.
basically the census, the well, I think people are aware of like the Census Bureau counting people and how that is used as a determinant of resources, congressional appropriations for people. And currently right now the ACS American Community Survey is sort of reevaluating the race and ethnicity codes for the upcoming census that will take place in 2030, right?
Well, they
And
actually implemented that survey, and they are at the same time, like you said, asking for public comment about those
right,
codes. But
in order
they have
to
administered it, because I've heard people received it.
oh, okay. So they've already administered it, but they're still receiving public comments as a way to possibly to make changes depending on the level
Absolutely.
of pressure is that's pushed in that particular direction. And for our
Yep.
purposes, we want, based on what you said, like we want the race and ethnicity codes to include an option for to to include a specific like category for the descendants of
Right.
enslaved people in this country for Black Americans,
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
in order to have the statistical data collection in order to ensure that our civil rights are being met. Especially when you think
Yes.
about Reconstruction amendments, so on and so
Yes.
forth. So
Yep. This whole stuff that's coming up in June with the Supreme Court and the challenge to birthright citizenship, they need to be able to identify who the group is. And we keep saying, hey, we over here. You just have not identified us properly. Because we have a lot of people in social media space and certainly on this app saying we're Black Americans, but this government has never given us that identifier. And so that was one of the ones we said that you need to have that specific identifier that is ascribed to us. We call ourselves Black American, we call ourselves African Americans too. But there has been an evolution in thought about how we identify over time based upon the social context, right? So at one time, everybody knew we was Negroes. We was the Negroes, you know. At one time, we was the colored, right? But as time and space marches on, you have these evolutions and ways in which people want to be identified. And it seems to me that the most recent iteration of how Black Americans in this country want to be identified is in association to this being our country. And that we are entitled to full benefit rights as persons who were created and emerged in this country as Black Americans. And so
And I love how you
there's that.
mentioned this as something that's bipartisan, right? And how, in terms of
Yep,
your own civic engagement, you've reached out to elected officials, no matter what side of the party lines that
that's
they're
right.
on. Um,
Hmm.
Question about like just approaching Congress people. How did you approach Congress people, and in what ways can like people listening who are interested in getting civically engaged, and what ways can they approach their own elected officials or even Ohio elected officials in order to
Yep.
kind of support this comment that we made in terms of the need of decoupling our Black identity on the census.
I think that's an excellent question, Mansour. Just remember, these people are like super busy. So anything you can do to give them, I guess, the clef notes or the short and sweet version of what you want to have lets them read it more quickly. Then you can go into more depth and detail. So one of the things that approaches that I've taken as a part of my consulting with our with my business, Emergent Global Spirals, our motto is to teach vision, to reach globally by teach to reach. Oh gosh, I forgot my motto. To teach visually, to reach globally, because some people learn better by reading text, and some people need images to help support the text or to help make the text make sense. So I was very adamant about having bells and whistles when I put stuff together for them. So in essence, I have visuals to help them appreciate the difference between the um able ethnic Black American and the Doba ethnic Black American, so that they could understand the concept of biracialness, multiracialness, and bi ethnicness. Because at one time, our country had been primarily just a black and white country. So we never really had to worry about any other kind of blacks, because most of the blacks was us. But as our immigration laws have changed and our country has opened its borders to other groups, people assume that because they look like you, they came from the same cultural experience and reality and value system as you. And what we certainly are discovering on X Spaces and X, the app formerly known as Twitter, that that is not the case. That we have people who are coming in who look very phenotypically similar to us. So you can't put us in categories just by the way we look, because of the whole phenomenon of how life has been for us as it relates to how we were developed in this country as descendants of slaves. Hmm.
Thanks, Dr. Brown. And Buffalo, I want to open it. I want to open it to you, but I also want to just remind listeners to retweet the space. There's a lot of a lot of knowledge being shared in this space, especially as we're about to open it up. And so, just retweet the space so that other people can join in and get some of this information as well.
Thank you.
There is a lot of knowledge going on, and I'm feeling sort of out of my depth. So right now, I just want to listen and kind of see um where people are at with it. And I'm just wrapping up reading your
Okay.
submission to the yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because the
definitely.
big thing for me.
Mhm.
Okay, go ahead, Monsieur.
No, I was just going to say that in the jumbotron, for folks who maybe not know, the submission, the public comment that we made is available for viewing, and I'm interested in just hearing folks' thoughts about the different categories or the ethnicity codes that we included in there, including Black American, ancestral Black American lineages, descendants of Black Americans, and U.S. freedmen descendant as identity markers um,
Hmm.
that we are proposing for the upcoming census.
And may I add, we told them you don't get to erase none of the indicators that we've had throughout history. That's evidence. So you keeping Negro, you keeping slave, you keeping colored, you keeping mulatto, you keeping quadroon, octoroon. If the Census Bureau collected it, you are preserving it. Now it may not be on the next iteration because of its obsolete nature, but it needs to be a part of the official record. Because if I go back to do some research, I don't want to see you talking about Black Americans when you really were talking about Negroes at that time and context, or you really were talking about coloreds, in the original documents. And so that when, as a scholar, we write something and we might quote something in the literature and it would say colored, and then we would put a bracket currently described as Black Americans. See? And so that's the danger when you don't have cultural preservation. And that's why we cited in our submission to the American Community Survey that there is a law. It's the 1966 Cultural Preservation Act. And out of that act, there is an area that's called it's called ACORN. It's the African American Civil Rights Network. And that organization has federal funding in order to preserve historical sites related to the civil rights movement and African American history. And they literally have a start date of 1954 and up. There's a time frame under which this. So anybody's trying to say 1619, well, that ain't what these resources is for. These resources are for preserving the historical record of the American civil rights or the African American civil rights movement. So that's an interesting thing that I started to plug into. And so I felt like some of our best arguments were to go into current congressional law, because if the OMB and or the Census Bureau and or the American Community Survey is in violation of those established congressional acts and laws, then we have a case to argue about civil rights violations. And I think that's probably in large part why all that stuff got snatched down off of the website. And I heard somebody said that there was something issued saying that until further notice, these things are being evaluated by the new director, Russell Vogt.
I'm. I just want listeners to know that at this point in time, feel free to raise your hand to speak if you'd like to make a comment or ask a question, anything of that nature. But Dr. Brown, I wanted you to touch on this claim that I've been seeing and hearing that that the decoupling of our Black identity is divisive. I think that you kind of touched on the fact that this is about human and civil rights for
Mhm.
a particular group of people, but there's a lot of people out there that claim that this is divisive. Like, can you just clear it up how this is actually something that Black immigrant groups should also be pushing, especially
Yeah,
if they're
welcoming.
claiming that
Mhm.
unity is important. Unity also involves ensuring that those who you see as brothers and sisters are also getting their rights protected, especially in a country in which they had a very particular history.
Oh, I think that was so wonderful the way you asked me a question and in fact answered it. So let me just co-sign what you just said. If you look at that document I shared with y'all, there's an area that I highlight in yellow that I think we put in the appendix that I was not aware of. How does the American Community Survey literally gave space for anybody to be Black? So that's why in the preamble of our document, we say we've gone from nobody's Black to everybody's Black, because there is social and economic capital to the experience of Black Americans in this country. And as we find ourselves in the midst of national reparations advocacy, I certainly don't shy away from that. And I did make mention of that to all the people I spoke with, how my position was that we were owed reparations. Um, this is a very important thing. Why would anyone want to be Black if there wasn't anything to be gained from it? Because we certainly don't have the easiest road to hoe in this country. Being associated with a Black identity is something that some people who may look just like all of us say that they're not. because they know that there's a certain weight that you carry in this country that's born of the historical consequences of being descendants of slaves. And that there are access points to resources that you can have that we don't necessarily get to. I can't apply for a Haitian American or a Haitian nursing scholarship. I can't apply for a Jamaican doctor's internship program or whatever, or resources that are designed to do STEM education for Italian Americans or Hispanic and Latino, because I'm not a part of that group. But when everybody can be a part of your group, you compete with them for resources that were supposed to be designed to do support and correction for you. So, but that's an unfair advantage when everybody can be you, but you can't be them. So, what does that make me when everybody can be me? Did that help my story?
Yes, that's I think that last point you just mentioned, I think that's the point that that we made in the comment about erasure.
Yeah. And also, the government has a responsibility. You can't engage in policies that are going to harm us. So, if you incentivize people to erase us by way of not giving us an identity, or saying, if I come in this country and I'm a Black American and a person from, what is it, the MENA group, it comes here and we have a child, you saying, "Oh, your child can get a Dr. Martin Luther King scholarship now because Mina can be of any race." But it's going to be interesting to see how this whole race dynamic plays out, because I think that the Supreme Court justices in the recent ruling on affirmative action, particularly Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, and more importantly, I think Justice Clarence Thomas, were very overt, and Gorsuch, and so was Kavanaugh, were very overt about the unique nature of who we are as descendants of slaves and freedmen, and actually used that language of freedmen in the ruling, that I think emboldened the Trump administration. Said, well, we're going to go and challenge them about this birthright citizenship, because he not only in his proclamation talked about Black Americans, and in his speech talked about African Americans, because I consider them co-equal categories. So, Black American, African American, U.S. freedman descendant, to me, is the same all qualifying group. And in fact, the U.S. freedman descendant can include those Blacks who were enslaved ancestrally. So that's why we created that category as well, because they struggling to get justice as well. And I think sometimes they feel like it's better for them to go it alone. That's fine if they want to do that. But we're just saying, if you want to plug into this being a descendant of freedmen thing, it's available to you because it's a part of the historical record. But we made clear, and so most of them have too, that they descend from those Black people who were a part of the transatlantic slave trade. Mhm. I think the evidence and the historical record supports that. Now, I know I've heard people who said otherwise. I don't get in arguments about what people believe. All I'm saying is good luck to you with your scholarship. I don't do that scholarship, and I wish you all the best. But my focus is on those people who are in my family lineage, and in the literature show that they descended from those persons who are part of the transatlantic slave trade, who this government had an opportunity to make whole in 1776 when we became an independent sovereign, and decided not to. They said, "Hey, this is working out pretty good for us. Let's continue with the slavery." And the continued debt that is owed to us that has never been paid, even after being emancipated. Because I'm 40 acres and the muse still do.
I've been seeing a lot of people adding their little reactions of agreement and 100 symbols. Once again, please, anyone who's listening, feel free to raise your hand, ask a question, give a comment, ask for clarity on anything. But Dr. Brown, another thing I wanted to touch on was in our comment, we talked about how the report from the statistician
Mhm.
mentioned that there's little research on the
Oh,
ability and the willingness of
mhm.
respondents to provide information about, in terms of disaggregating the Black and African American population groups.
Yeah.
Um, what do you think? Well, how can folks sort of, I guess, push
React.
this comment so that they see that this is something that is sort of needed and wanted by our people?
Yeah. Well, this is one of those moments where I say my weak spot sometimes is diplomacy. Cause I'm like, sometimes I'm ready, aim, instead of ready, aim, fire, I'm like fire, ready, aim. When I saw that comment that there was no willingness to provide the scholarship, I took it as intentionally disingenuous to avoid giving us the granularity we deserve. Cause you know as well as I do, and a lot of people in this room, that we produce plenty of scholarship in those listening sessions, in those presentations, in them town hall meetings. I mean, I was learning stuff from people too. So for them to put that in there to me was
Yeah,
a punt instead of kicking the ball to give us the granularity we was promised. And I think that was their biggest mistake, is that they created two new categories while at the same time ignoring us. And some people tried to make the
yes,
argument that, well, they've been trying to get their categories for 20 years. I don't even care if they try to get it for 50 years. We've been here over 500 years, and if anyone should have been giving precedent in presenting a new category, it certainly was us. You gonna tell me some people who got here yesterday get to come before me? I think not.
that part.
Okay, go ahead, Buffalo.
All right,
I
you go
told
ahead,
you.
Buffalo.
Okay,
Uh-huh.
someone in the comments have asked a question, and I'm kind of feeling the same way. They said I was reading the information on the jumbotron with the designation identity codes. I see
Mhm.
Pan African is also listed, which I'm
Yep.
confused on why it was mentioned. I think I know the answer to it, but I would appreciate hearing your explanation.
Yes. Okay. So never be deceived about the fact that politics has a role and power in everything that happens in this country. And the voices and seats at the table are the ones that get to speak. You see that in part of that presentation, I put the hyperlinks in there. They had a whole group that was designed to be sensitive. And remember, they delineated them to immigrants, to people with disabilities. I mean, there's everybody. Everybody in that list that group was required to give attention to as they embarked upon these codes, they did not include us. I was shocked. And I said, how are you going to engage in this future assessment of the need to have the descendant of slave and freedman designation when no one on your panel is a member of that group? And so I hope that stung like a bee sting. And I think it did to those persons and elected officials I've been sending it to, because I really believe that they know that there's some civil rights issues here with how the OMB and the Census Bureau have comported themselves in this current moment. It's and power. When you look at that video, and I think it's in there. I mean, most of the people who were on that video, those were Latinos, and I felt like this past administration, has really prioritized them. And I have been in webinars and some of these links you'll get sometime to join these WebEx meetings, and I've been in there just rocking the boat, honey. I'm in there and they talking about all this stuff they gonna do because I was in San Antonio and they had one with our mayor and a whole bunch of like Latino women who were talking about they had 6 kids and they needed to make sure they had resources to support them. I was like, is he doing one of these for us? And the same thing back when COVID broke out, this is during the time the Trump administration, he called a meeting of these webinars with African American leaders. And he did one for each group, right? So he did one for African Americans, he did one for Latinos, he did one for Asians, he did one for all the groups, right? So I'm in there in the African American group, and there was some people in there talking about, what about the Latinos? Honey, I jumped on that mic. I said, well, he got a whole situation scheduled for y'all. So you maybe need to preserve that question for that group, but this group is about the African Americans' response to COVID and what this administration is going to do to support us. So you need to table that, and that is forever in the record. Because I just be thinking it's the Lord, because when they be saying the mics are open, I'd be like, do 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 do, and I always get in. So I said, I must obviously get in because I was supposed to say something. And I do. And the room be quiet and stuff, and people be stuttering, and I don't even care. Because I was like, you need to hear that. Yep.
So you're saying that Black Americans brought their ideology into this
Oh, yes.
sense of coding.
Hmm. Everybody who get a voice, be look at Mina. I mean, remember them town halls? Look how, I mean, they had already been working with them for years. Did y'all know that? Like the American Community Survey, I think started in 2019. So let me reiterate too. The American Community Survey is kind of like a checkpoint between the decennial survey or the decennial census. So you have the last official census was 2020, and mind you, they have admitted they have undercounted us for both the last two censuses. I am of the position, and again, I qualify everything I say, but this is my opinion. I think we are grossly undercounted in this country as blacks who are descendants of slaves. I think according to the last few research I saw, they're arguing that we're somewhere between 40 million or something like that. I think we probably more like 60. I really think that. And so what is interesting about this moment of reparations advocacy, if this administration ties in the census to possible reparations, watch our numbers go up because people gonna make sure they get counted. And that's a little. If anybody in here on the listener section, that's a little avenue for recommendation you might want to consider. If you want to get a good count, get the people out. If I got my alarm off, Monsieur, we recording this, and it's gonna have my clock floating down every 6 minutes. And I feel like if I go and turn it off, it's gonna mess up the room. So I didn't want to leave. But I don't know, Monsieur. You did you have anything else? I think I'm gonna go turn my clock off. If it feels,
Wait, are you talking about like the timer you have on your phone?
yeah, keep floating down. Is that gonna show up?
All right. The next time that it goes on, if you're on an iPhone, if you tap it,
Uh-huh.
it'll say remind or stop. You'll be able to
Oh,
do it
okay.
that way.
Because
You don't
I
have to
thought it
keep
was gonna
jumping.
take me out the room, so I didn't want to do it. So,
Um,
well,
I think you gotta.
I just been sliding it back up, Buffalo, so it go away.
I think it pull it down. Don't tap
Okay.
on it. Pull it down. Try
Okay.
that first.
Okay, I'll try that next time it come up. But I think I got most of the meat of what and potatoes of what I wanted to say and share. So there's a lot of us
Yeah,
who
we
are out
definitely.
here, huh?
No, I was going to say we definitely. I don't have any more like sort of questions or commentary. I'm just really interested to hear
Okay.
thoughts, questions, comments from folks who are listening. But in terms of the agenda that we have, we definitely shared all the knowledge
Covered.
that
Yeah,
we
and I want to
had on
reiterate
our
too
what we've been
that
doing.
this particular submission, we did focus on the fact that we were all residents or have historical connections to the state of Ohio. Because I think that strengthens your advocacy when you're advocating from a space where you live there. If you don't live there, why would anybody listen to you? I mean, you just don't have
Okay.
standing, which is going to be a big part of all this stuff going forward. So, not only do I still have a home there, that's my childhood home. Our home was made a historic landmark, and my business is located in Ohio, even though I live here in Texas. But it is what it is.
Before you go, Mike, how you doing? Let me say one thing. I set a quick timer right now so
Okay.
that I could tell you for sure. So when it does pop up, hit it, and then it'll pop up. It'll say stop or repeat. So just hit
Okay. So it
stop.
says get a quick view of the speaker request. So do I tap on that?
Get a quick view of the speaker request.
Yeah, I don't know what
We
that,
have
honey. I'm leaving that up to my store. I just tapped the screen. So he my co-host and he my technical support. So,
Buffalo has been very helpful too because this whole timer
oh
thing that
yeah,
y'all are talking about, I have no idea
yeah.
about it.
She a veteran. Hey Hilda.
You want to let Actify speak, ask his
Yeah,
question?
sure. You can go ahead and let whoever speak need to want to speak.
Hey, folks, I'm sorry. I just got out the woods. Can I get a quick brief on on what's going on? I'm sorry.
You may not.
I knew it.
Well,
So
we were just
mean.
okay. That's okay. Okay, Michael. Always for you. So, what we were talking about is our response to the Federal Registry note inviting everyone to give public comment about the American Community Survey Codes. Because as you know, the OMB came out with its decision of how it was not going to give us the granularity that we had requested, but in fact created a minimum category of Black or African American, which we felt did not do sufficient granularity while offering that to the Hispanic Latino created category and the MENA category. So, in this effort, we give our rebuke to the OMB for failing to do that and offer some codes that we feel like could serve as a way to rectify that egregious error. But it does require that it decouples Black or African American and just have a Black category, just like it did the white category. I mean, we the principal groups from which this whole stuff was established. Why would not our categories mirror each other? The white category doesn't say white or European; it just says white. So just make ours Black, and then use the sub coding system to create this granularity that we were denied. And so what we offered was three, I think it'd be fair to call them subcategories, where one is Black will be the overarching minimum category. And then we say create that Black American category, which all of us have assumed exists, but it doesn't exist officially by the federal government. So we're saying create that category. Then, in addition to that, create the able ethnic and the Doba ethnic categories to account for those Black Americans who have two parents and four grandparents who are descendants of slaves, and those who have one parent who is an able ethnic or descendant of slaves, and the other parent is not. So that accommodates that phenomenon of biracialness and bi ethnicity that exists since the country has become so diverse. So we offered those proposals. Because those
Did
other
you also
categories are
offer
still,
Freeman?
oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I saw I don't know if it was American Freedman or Freedman as a category. Was that something new that you were offering as well?
No, we don't do American freedmen because I saw some literature that called Haitians freedmen. So I just said United States freedmen descendants because there's only one United States. So that's why I use that kind of language. So I don't want nobody saying, well, I'm from Puerto Rico, I'm American, and I'm a descendant of slave, I'm American freedman. I just try to make little space for those kind of arguments. So it is the United States that got gathered back together post the Civil War because remember, those Confederate states succeeded. So were we the United States at that time? Or were we North the North and the South, the succeeding states? So winning the Civil War made us the United States of America, and the 13th, 14th, and 15th Reconstruction Amendments made us United States citizens. Because there were people who had citizenship, I guess, rights in their tribe, or some people, or even in their states. Because there were people who were citizens of it was free Blacks that was walking around here that had the ability to vote and engage to certain degrees. But we're not going to be stupid and act like manifest destiny isn't a part of this country's history and that white supremacy isn't a part of this country's history. So even though you may have been a free Black landowner, there were limitations.
All right. Thank you so much for that.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate that. And I do like United States Freedmen. That does. I've been using U.S.
Uh-huh.
Freedmen, so we're on the line, on the
Yeah.
same line. And I think that is more. It does have a nice ring to it. United States Freedmen does is more
Yeah.
precise.
Yeah. So does Black American, because I think the real phenomenon of people trying to de-Americanize us is seriously problematic. Because you're not going to, do a banana in the tailpipe or all this stuff my family and I have created in this space, and you're gonna tell me all of a sudden I ain't entitled to it. You better go on, but you are. You knew coming here may not even be a citizen,
Yeah,
but you're entitled to all these benefits, rights,
yeah.
and
This
protections.
denationalization.
Yeah, it's a problem. And we gonna see what happened in June.
Yeah,
I'm super excited about the Supreme Court because I think it's going there. And I think that it's being pushed because there's reasonable confidence it's gonna be a 9-2 decision to end that birthright citizenship as it's currently constructed. Nobody's ever completely happy after the Supreme Court. That's what's so beautiful about having three co-equal branches of government. That it was designed for them to be able to check each other. And I saw this recent speech by Stephen Miller out of the White House, where I was very uncomfortable with his interpretation of the power of the executive branch. I said, "Oh no, boo boo, you need to go look at the Constitution. We don't have no potentates around here and kings and queens." And so the Constitution was intentionally designed to make sure that those powers are able to somewhat check each to with the executive branch, and certainly we've seen that with these executive orders from the last administration and this administration. But that's why it's important for us to be civically engaged citizens. We have a voice. I don't care how much money Elon Musk has; he only get one vote, like I do.
yeah. I think when you said the denationalization and the Africanization of us is intentional, and folks have been doubling down on it,
Yeah,
right? I mean, I'm not saying we don't come from African descent. I'm
right.
not go. I will never go down that line. But what I'm saying is, we are Americans. We've been here
Yeah.
over 400 years, and as a distinct people over here over 400 years, it's time to let it go.
Well,
It's
I don't
time to
know if
let it
I'm
go.
gonna
It
say
doesn't mean,
that because I'm trying to be sensitive to how people move into new knowledge, and I ain't trying to be upsetting people's heart because I have no problem with Kwanzaa. A lot of these things we made uniquely ours. We wear those little kente cloths, but they don't even be wearing them like that. That became a part of the African American search for identity process from roots to contemporary day, where we have all decided that we want to make sure that we're embraced as Black Americans. But you're not going to get rid of us and our identities as Negroes and African Americans. I don't have, you're not getting rid of the identity as being a slave. I'm not embarrassed of being a descendant of slaves. I'm proud of my ancestors who lived long enough to make sure that I was able to realize the dream that they never got to have. Who decided they was gonna keep on fighting and trying to, make things happen pre and post slavery. So you're not gonna make me ashamed of nothing. That's a part of my history. That's why historic preservation is the law, and we need to make sure that we use that as one of the arrows in our quiver to argue for our disaggregation and unique identifiers. So to me, the other plan B, I guess, or plan A1 and A2 is that I'm trying to cultivate some constitutional scholars because I'm not just depending on the executive branch to do us justice. Don't seem like nobody advocates for us except us, the best. And so I am talking to people who are experts in the area of law because we have Brown versus the Board of Topeka that didn't come from the executive branch. That was the Thurgood Marshall and those lawyers going to the Supreme Court with that case. Now, there are various arguments that are made how effective it was, but the idea was that separate but equal was illegal. You're not giving us that, you're giving us full citizenship. So it ended up being these efforts to integrate, which, mixed results, of course, especially I think more recently in the area of education. I feel like we could do better. And Mansour knows how I feel about this, that I'm very much an advocate of descended of freedmen schools. One of the things we petition with our local officials is to create a Descendants of the Great Migration and U.S. Freedmen Museum, where we are implementing educational programs. So we will look at some point to create pre-K through 12 pipelines to our HBCUs, which is, I think, is going to be another area that's going to get challenged with this current, you know, attack on racial identifiers. But we got
yeah. I'm
no, no.
sorry.
I'm saying, but I mean, I feel like we got the big joker and the deuce. So bring it on.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. We do. I think. I just want to clarify. When I say let it go, I mean let go of the urge to quote unquote share our kills with everybody
Mhm.
Brown. I think we got that urge and that sentiment has to die, and it can't die fast
Yeah,
enough.
but I still
You
have
know,
to go back to Actify that people gonna be what they ready to be. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm very uncomfortable.
indeed,
I'm
indeed.
uncomfortable with people trying to impose their wills on other people. Even God don't do that. He said, here's the offer. You can come if you want to. He don't make you become, Christian or born again. He said, this is the offer. But he still does. That's one thing about God, that if God ain't violating my will, what make you think you gonna do it? So that's how I look at things. You get choices, and that's one of the principles, even though it isn't always honored, of this country. The whole idea of freedom, justice, and the pursuit of happiness. It's just that this government has put its thumb on the scale on who gets to access it, and you're not gonna keep it away from us. This my Fannie Lou Hamer coming out of me. If y'all not gonna have, if we don't have it, y'all not gonna have it. Y'all not gonna have it neither. We gonna tear it up.
People get mad about that sentiment, like, oh, you don't
Mhm.
want other groups to be, you just can't just worry about yourself. I think it's interesting.
Mhm.
You said some things that, like, you were talking about JD Vance,
Mhm.
and then you talked about like the beautifulness of the Constitution and the equal how do I say this? The way that the three branches of government kind of
Co-equal
equalize
branches,
each other.
separation of
Hmm.
powers. Uh-huh.
Yes.
Mhm.
And so it reminded me of a video that I recently seen of JD Vance. It's kind of off the subject, so I don't know how you want to run the space if I just bring it up. I was gonna. Would you prefer I just send it to you? We can talk about it later.
Yeah, you could do it. I mean, I don't have any problems just saying that. I don't really have a thought about that, or I will have a thought about that. I'm not trying. I know one of the things that I directly said something to him and his advisors, that I didn't like, that bringing that guy to the White House who killed the baby on the subway in New York, Jordan Neely. What was the guy's name? The white guy that choked him.
Oh gosh, the judge mentioned his name today.
I did not like that. I did
I
not
forgot.
like
I,
bring.
I can see his face, curly
Yeah,
hair,
I
white
did
boy.
not
Yeah, I
like
know you're
that at
talking about.
all,
Yeah.
and I made that very, very known. And I feel like there's elements in the White House that try to influence him a lot, and then I think there's an element of him. He just that's his reality, right? That white men, need to have a voice, and he's being a voice for them. But I think that was a mistake to bring that young man to the White House, because it suggested that there was some kind of heroism associated with what he did, and there absolutely was not. And those who stood around, who could have saved that baby who had a muffin in his pocket, no, I ain't got nothing for you, at all. You gonna pay for that, you know, inability to act in justice, because that young man did not have to die. He did not have a weapon. He did not,
Hmm.
do an attack. I'm glad I can't remember his name. Let the Lord remember when he come up for judgment.
Penny something Penny.
Daniel
Daniel
Penny. Yeah,
Penny.
I didn't like that at all. And I'm not sure if, and this is my interpretation, if President Trump was all that. I mean, I know he was at the game, but I believe that that was Trump's sons. I feel like sometimes I'm very uncomfortable with the energy that comes out of that little group. But it's been interesting watching how they're trying to negotiate all that white male energy and feeling of it's our time and disadvantage, juxtaposition the white females, in that space. On both sides, the white female response to this paradigm shift in how the government is moving, and yeah, people's value system. It's just been interesting to observe, and I'm just looking to see where it goes. But
Hey, Dr. Brown, since education is your wheelhouse, how do you feel about the letter that the Department of Education sent out? It felt like an overture to, for me, it felt like an overture for us to take our rightful
why you
place.
trying to set me up,
I,
Michael, when me and you already talked about this? You tell me how I feel about it.
yeah, yeah. I know, but I think it
You
would
think
help
you
for other
still
people to
Donahue
understand
or
because
something?
it is your space. No, 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 no. If you don't feel comfortable sharing it, that's fine.
Yeah.
But I think it would help folks understand what's going on because I think to my mind, I think the letter was an
Well,
overture to us. Hey,
tell us,
here's your
Michael, what do
opportunity.
you think is going on?
I think it was an overture.
Oh,
I think they would say, hey, here's your. We can't out and out
okay.
say
We don't have
that
to
we're
copy.
going to help you, but here's the window. You know.
Use the jumbotron to post what you're talking about. I think that'll help the crowd.
And while he gets it ready, I'll say, just so you know, I sent you the
Okay.
video. I think it's, they say it's 5 years
Oh.
ago. And what's so interesting about it, when, in reference to what you were saying, is that he's saying, he brings up Andrew
Mhm,
Jackson and the Indian Removal
mhm,
Act, and that even though the Supreme Court ruled against it, they did not have the power to enforce it. And so the executive branch stood down, and that was the way that the Indian Removal Act was able to be, carried out.
mhm.
And so that's people are looking at it right now as, in instances where Trump could potentially, as he's being sued for these executive orders and
Mhm.
whatnot, and the Supreme Court goes against what his judgment is that they have what power that they have to kind of, nullify the Supreme Court is, or the judiciary, in whole, is that, they don't have to carry out what it is that the judiciary kind of
Yeah.
orders. So I thought it was very
Well,
interesting.
they definitely, it's a chess game in politics, right? People be making moves and trying, like, um, like that's you sunk my battleship game. You just move it and said, I forget how that game go, but anyway, people make moves because they want to force another move. That's why I was saying that we should keep in our back pocket an option to make a civil rights challenge. And I'm gonna tell y'all, I like Leo Terrell. I don't know if y'all seen Leo Terrell, but did y'all see him when he was defending OJ? He used to be a very staunch, and he used to get in with Geraldo all the time. Well, I think he's been made under secretary or one of the high level officials in the civil rights division under Pat Bondi. And I like Pat Bondi. What I'm saying for her, she ain't no shrinking violet, honey. That woman up there and said, "This is what it is," you know. So it's just gonna be very interesting. And y'all, it's only been what, a month? It's only been a month that he's been president, and everybody's expecting all these things. But we gave all this grace to Obama to give us a nothing burger, So I'm just gonna sit back and chill and say what I need to say and try and move in the spirit, and make sure that I'm saying stuff in wisdom instead of just saying stuff off the top of my dome because I'm upset about something. And I make space for that too, because I'm gonna be who I am, you know. But I ain't gonna let nobody disrespect me or my people or sit back and let you just, punk us. I'm the descendant of a freedman and people who fought in the Civil War. I ain't sitting back and just letting nobody gonna roll over me. And I'm a new grandma, and every time I look at my little grandbaby face, I'm like, I'm setting up a future for my little Charlie, honey. So that's how I move in this world right now. My family, my people, more so, my God and my mission. And that's how I move around on purpose.
I'm sorry. I found it. It's in the
Okay.
jumbotron. Um, so the letter came from, I can't, I'm on the road, but the letter came from the Department of Education. And the base of the letter said, okay, they're ending all race-based programs and all DEI programs in the education in our whoever gets funds, federal
Uh-huh.
funds from uh from the Department of Education. They're gonna end all those programs. So a lot of these programs are becoming race neutral.
Yeah.
Got it? Good.
Well,
But in the middle of
go
pay,
ahead. Oh
good. I'm
no,
sorry.
continue, please.
Yeah, and but in the middle of page two, to my mind, is an opening. And I'm sorry, Buffalo. Can you read that for me? Because I can't. Because I'm, like I said,
Okay.
I'm on the
Okay.
road.
Yeah, you
All
drive
right.
careful.
I believe it was the Secretary of the Department of Education that this memo is from.
Yes, ma'am.
Um, okay. Let
It's
me,
on ed.gov.
all right, let me switch. Can I turn this? Okay. The Supreme Court's 2023 decision in Students for Fair Admissions versus Harvard, which clarified that the use of racial preferences in college admissions is unlawful, sets forth a framework for evaluating the use of race by state actors and entities covered by Title VI. The court explained that classifying and assigning students based on their race is lawful only if it satisfies strict
Uh-huh.
scrutiny, which, which means that any use of race must be
Yeah.
narrowly
Uh-huh.
tailored that is necessary to achieve a compelling
Yeah.
interest. And to date, the Supreme Court has recognized only two interests as compelling in the context of race based action. Number one, remediating specific identified instances of past discrimination that violated the Constitution or a statute. And number two, avoiding imminent and serious risk to human safety in prisons, such as a
Hmm.
race riot.
Yeah.
Nebulous
Yeah.
concepts like
Mhm.
I think there's just one or two more sentences
Okay.
left.
Mhm.
Nebulous concepts like racial balancing and diversity are not compelling interests. As the court
Mhm.
explained in Students for Fair Admissions versus Harvard, an individual's race may never be used against him and may not operate as a stereotype in governmental decision making.
Yeah, I mean to me that's the big joker and a little joker in your hand. But what I think is so funny is this magical thinking that people think there's just gonna be okay. What we'll do is just we'll remove this word, then we'll trick them. No, that's magical, immature thinking. These people out here saying, "Well, what we gonna do?" And then they put it out there in the public. I was like, "How is you being strategic and secretive and telling people, well, just put on your application your life experience and just mention tangentially that this happened to you because you was a colored person. And then we will look at it not as a diversity, but just as a, an outlier to that experience. Yeah, whatever. This Justice Department and this agenda that he seems to have about, not allowing people to be jumping in and out of racial classifications that were not meant to them seems very serious to me. And we shall see. That's all I can say. I am worried about what everybody else do. I'm a finite human being, and I can only have so much human and emotional capital to invest in these fights. And I've chose to fight the good fight on behalf of my people because it seems like all our best players fight for everybody else.
I agree, and I think to my mind, I view that letter as a window that we should be jumping through with both feet. Right? We should say, okay, this is as you said, Dr. Brown. This is the big joker and the little
Mhm.
joker, and we need to play our cards. There is no way. Well, I take that back. It would be very difficult for the courts or legislators to push back on what history says and what the courts have said concerning us. And I think and I think this is a huge faux pas on the Democrats' part not to see this and take advantage of it. Which, of course, is to my mind, again speaking for myself, to my mind is intentional because we're not part of their future
And this
plans.
and this
So
takes
again,
us circles us
my per
back to the original purpose of this room to talk about those ACA codes. Rachel Dolezal should not
hmm
be able to say that she is an able ethnic. But
hmm
and unless you have those identifiers codified in the federal registry and then essentially in law, then people can be whatever. Hey, we just came through a whole administration that said I identify as, and you ain't allowed to say nothing about it. And then we got an administration that said there are only two genders. Boom, deal with it. You ain't playing in these sports no more. So we just, all of us is kind of like, wait, you want to know you gonna be whoever this say. You know? And how that gets negotiated is going to be very interesting. That's why we got courts, and that's why we got these little political advocates, and hopefully we can give them the ammunition to help them advocate for us, which is how the system is designed. It's called what is it, representation? What is that, Mansour? We have government rep something. It's a violation when you have without representation. I don't know why it's slipping my
Taxation.
mind. Yeah, but we have representative government. That's what I meant to say. And so we live
Yes.
in a democratic republic where we elect people who's supposed to be our voice. And if they ain't being our voice, that mean in what is it, 2 years we put somebody in who gonna be our voice. That's the threat we hold over their head. You know,
Hmm.
you ain't getting our vote for free. You better deliver for us. And if you don't, we gonna cultivate and find somebody who will. We don't care
Absolutely.
what
Back
party
to
it
the
is.
earlier back to
Yeah.
the earlier points about civic engagement.
Yes.
We have to utilize that power that we have
Yep.
as citizens. And I just also
Absolutely.
wanted to just say shout out to Michael. Thank you for bringing in this the document. It really did just it tied it all together in terms of what we've been talking about during this call.
My pleasure, Mansour. How you doing, brother? By the way, I'm sorry. I didn't
I've been good. I've been good.
glad to hear. Glad to hear. Yeah, I think to my mind it's a window,
Yeah.
and I think and which to my I don't know if this is how partisan this room is, but I think this is not because the Democrats don't want to deal with this administration in any way. That leaves it up to us, which is where it should be, right, in the hands of the grassroots and the people that really care about the
Well, wait a
future
minute, wait a
of
minute.
our people in this
I'm
country.
not gonna throw my representatives under the bus because I got some good Democrat that representatives in my state, and I think we need to be careful that we understand that all politics is local. And so them people that come here talking about the Democrats need to be destroyed, is you crazy? You need to talk about your backyard, not my backyard. And so, I hear what you're saying, and you do you and you do me. That people really fail to realize that governors are kind of like little presidents. The Constitution, I think it's the 10th Amendment, said no, anything that is not the explicit purview of the federal government belongs to the states. And there are governors who will exercise that. I live with one who do that. He don't always agree with what's happening at the executive branch, and that's one of the reasons I admired him because he was a senator during the time that I was working at Children's Hospital in Ohio, and he always had a passion for children. And when the stuff happened with the Haitian people, he seemed to be very sensitive to it, but he started to realize the distinctions between these different categories of black people, and that they were not us. These are people who come from a different worldview and experience than us, who are multi-generational blacks that descend from slaves. And them white people in Springfield, was saying that. I remember I see this one town hall, this dude said, "Not even African American." And I thought it was so funny because he was so sincere, because he was like, they're not the kind of black people that we know. Not to say it in a racist way. He was like, hey man, this something's going on. You can't overwhelm our little small town of Springfield with 60,000 new people who don't even speak English. But yeah, be mindful of the role of the census, the role of these identifiers. They are all very, very important. And that, like, to me, I think that we need to be mindful that we're not putting the cart before the horse. Because I know this is in
Hmm.
a reparations space, but if you get your reparations, you want to be able to have them protected, right? Because people gonna work they finesse. I mean, we have people who get resources. You gonna have people coming in trying to marry them, trying to adopt them, trying to finesse them. And I would really like to see us have some guardrails in place where we have a continual attention to how the well-being of black who are descendants of slaves and freedmen are doing, until such time that we reach that ideal is our full citizenship with all the corresponding debts paid. So that's a good note to end
Yes.
on, right, Marcella?
Hmm. Absolutely. The struggle continues, and we are a continuation of that legacy that has been laid out before us.
Yep. And so this is recorded, and I'll put it on my YouTube channel where you can see any other ones that we've done previously, along with some of the other civic and community engagement activities that, I have to do. I have done. And I just want to encourage people to be civically and community engaged. And being civically engaged means educating yourself about the civics. You'd be surprised that some elected officials don't even understand, you know, the co-equal checks and balance of government, or other aspects and stuff. They're quite surprised. I'm very proud of everybody in this room who is engaged in the civic and community engagement and activism, not only in this space, because I did an article about this. It takes so long to get journal articles published. We actually did the research back in 2003, and it's going to be coming out this semester, me and my graduate student. And we did it at the time that it was still Twitter. And so we looked at how, people were interpreting the whole reparations advocacy. And most of my students, because I teach at what's called a a Hispanic Survey Institution, and I saw the change in people's support for reparations when they understood the history better. And so I think that to the degree that we can be our little Johnny Appleseeds wherever we are, because you'll have people, maybe even some of us in this room right now, who didn't support reparations because they didn't think it could happen, or they didn't understand why it's due. And so we just had Kendrick Lamar sit up there and talk about 40 acres and a mule, and a lot of these folks are starting to rock the red, white, and blue for those who keep trying to separate us from our entitlement of our citizenship. And I think it's glorious. And I'm enjoying what I call the great Black American paradigm shift. Mhm. And with that, I bid you adieu. Until next time.
Thank you, Dr.
Much
Brown.
love,
You're
much
welcome.
love to all.
Okay. Bye, y'all. Have a good evening.